So I am back with another American Gods review. I remember the last time that I did the review, I told you that I was losing my voice because I went to a wedding and I was partying all night. It turns out I was losing my voice because I have the flu. I'm just getting over it, and today is like my first full day of strength. Normally I post my reviews on like Tuesday because I give myself about 2 days of research so that I can give you guys a thorough review. But this review is coming a bit late because this is the first time that I've been able to like stand in days. So enough about me. Let's get into Laura and Mad Sweeney's quirky relationship. So this episode, we get the Mexican gods coming to America story. We open up with a group of Mexican people who are obviously crossing the border, which is apparently very risky and dangerous and scary. Oh gosh, God bless the people who actually make it. Whew. This scene was tough to watch because it's a reality, you know what I mean? I live in LA, so this is a real reality for me, you know what I mean? It was just hard to watch, guys. It was really, really hard to watch because I was just like, I had no idea that this is the risk that people take to have a better life for themselves. And again, like I said in my last review, this is an immigrants show. Like, this show is really about immigrants coming to America, all in search of a better way of life. Anyway, they're crossing the border and they get to this lake, and like one of the ladies who's leading them, she says, listen, if you can't swim, you can't go any farther. And there's this guy and his eyes are like terrified. I'm like, you're obviously the dude that can't swim. Me. I'm from Philadelphia. We don't swim in the concrete jungle. Nobody gets in those pools. Anyway, so he's like with these big boots. He's like nervous and he's like wading in the water with everybody. And then he starts to drown. And then out of nowhere, gorgeous Mexican Jesus walks on water in these sandals. What do they call it? Chanchulas? My friend calls them like chanchulas or something like that. Chanculas? Whatever. I'm black. He walks on water and he saves the guy. Just then, as he saves the guy from drowning, all of a sudden you see these lights come on, and then the lady who is leading them like tells the guys to run, and then you see this gun that has "In God We Trust" or "Thy Kingdom Come" or something like that. Is it "In God We Trust"? It's something about, no, "Thy Kingdom" is written on the gun, and as soon as she tells them to run, the gun shoots. And whoever was shooting the gun had a rosary attached around his hand. And so they shoot the gun and like half of her face is blasted off. And then, Jesus, this was, I'll admit it, it was cheesy. And then Mexican Jesus tries to save them, and he puts up his hands, and his hands are pierced with bullets. His hands and his heart are pierced with bullets, and he falls down and like the cross symbol. And all of a sudden, his hands are bleeding and his heart is bleeding because I guess he got pierced in his heart as well. And then tumbleweed rolls by and it's like a crown of thorns. And I was just like, I went from being very terrified to disturbed to like, oh, this is really cheesy. Then I was just like, oh my goodness, thank you, Mexican Jesus, for your sacrifices. It was a lot going on in the first 5 minutes of this show. I think it was also very interesting how Mexican Jesus was slaughtered by, I guess, white American Christianity. And I think that this episode was really diving into the race relations in America. They kind of dived into it in episode 2, but I feel like this is really diving into race relations and how it mixes with our religion, and how we have various cultures in America, and a large majority of the people in America are Christians, but we all have like different variations of Jesus and Christianity. And although like in Christianity we're all like brethren and sister, and there are people who are mortal enemies but who are all Christian, who all believe in like the same God but just have a different variation of Jesus. I don't know, I thought that this team was like really, really smart about that, because it really is like, this is really American Gods. Like, this right here, to me, a lot of people didn't like this episode, but I feel like this episode was like the meat and the bones of the entire season for me. This was also a throwback to, I think, episode 3, where Mr. Wednesday was talking to Shadow Moon, and they were, I guess, getting copies for the heist that they were trying to pull off at the bank. And Mr. Wednesday was talking to Shadow Moon. He was talking about how many Jesuses there was, and Shadow Moon's like, there's a lot of Jesus, and he was like, well, there's a lot of need for Jesus, you know, because Mr. Wednesday was explaining to Shadow Moon that there's Mexican Jesus, there's white Jesus, there's black Jesus, you know. So it was always like a callback or a throwback to a different scene. So I was just like, oh, okay, this is where we're at, and now we get Mexican Jesus. So with that line from Mr. Wednesday, I think we're going to get a lot of variations of Jesus. Maybe not in this season because we have like 2 more episodes, but I think in the next season we're probably going to get the different variations of Jesus that was mentioned in episode 3. You know what? I'm a Christian, so this is I really only know a lot about Christianity. So like this show's opened up my eyes to so many different things, and in a good way. I'm learning a lot. If you know, and can you please write it down in the comment section, is Jesus the only God that sacrificed himself for his believers? Because it seems like, from what I've seen thus far on the show, like the believers are making sacrifices to empower the gods. And I guess the same thing works with Jesus, but I haven't seen any God like sacrifice themselves for their believers or those who believe in them. Is it just Jesus at this point? Let me know if there are other gods who, especially in this show, or that we'll see in this show if you've read the book, who have also sacrificed themselves for their believers, or is it just Jesus? This whole scene where Shadow Moon is like trying to make sense of everything that's happening, like he's still reeling from seeing media like floating into the interrogation room, and from seeing that tree like come to life from a chair and like attack him. So he's like trying to make sense of everything. And Mr. Wednesday, I don't know why he wouldn't just tell him. Is it the fact that Shadow Moon has to come to the realization of everything that's happening on his own and voice it? Because for some reason, Mr. Wednesday just won't tell him what's going on. I felt like he was kind of leading him on a bit. And then right after that, we get the scene where Laura sees Shadow Moon driving away in Mr. Wednesday's car. And Mr. Wednesday sees Laura, and he turns up the music and he speeds off. Because for some reason, Mr. Wednesday does not want Shadow Moon and Laura to connect. I don't know why, because I haven't read the book. We have 2 more episodes, so I'm getting kind of antsy. I'm just like, will we find out what Laura means in all of this? Because she plays a huge part in the season, and a few of you wrote down in the comment section that in the book she has a huge role as well. But when I went to the meeting, sit down with the writers, and the creators were Brian Fuller at that, I think it was Deadline put something together, and I went to, hear them speak about American Gods. They were saying that Laura wasn't expounded upon as much in the book as she's in this season. So I was confused by that, but a lot of you are saying that Laura is a huge part in the book, and she really means something huge to Shadow Moon and this whole God War situation. So I don't know who she is. I don't know if maybe Mr. Wednesday wants her out of the picture because Shadow Moon, I guess him believing in her gives Laura some kind of godly power over him and takes away the godly belief that Mr. Wednesday needs to win this old God war. I don't know, but I feel we're not going to find out her role within this season, because they have 2 more episodes to go and they're about to start filming for season 2. So I'm just like, how long are y'all gonna drag this out? You know what I mean? Like we haven't gotten to like anything. Like we haven't seen Mr. Ibis again. We haven't seen Anubis again. And those are the ones who got Laura together and sent her to Shadow Moon. So I don't think that they have enough time to introduce so much information within 2 episodes. And we still haven't met Easter. Oh, this show. So my 2 favorite people, I mentioned this before, I love the scenes with Laura and Mad Sweeney. They have such great chemistry. Their lines are so funny. I just love how they play off of each other. And in a show that has a lot going on, a lot of information, a lot of drama, little bits of action every now and again, it's nice to just have this comic relief of Laura and Mad Sweeney. Every time I see them together, I know that I'm going to like be falling out laughing over something. And this is exactly what happened. So Mad Sweeney gets to Laura. He finally finds Laura again, and she's just like, oh my gosh, I thought I got rid of you. He takes a different approach with her this time. This time, instead of waiting for her to rot, he says that she needs a resurrection. And so basically he concocts this plan that he's going to take her to meet Jesus. And Laura's just like, wait a minute, you mean Jesus Christ? Because he like says you need a resurrection. She's just like, did you just drop Jesus Christ? He said, and Matt Sweeney is like, well, I know a guy who knows a guy. So I'm thinking that he's going to take her to Jesus to get resurrected. And I guess maybe this approach that he's taking because Laura has to willingly give him the coin, like it has to be a free will. I think that maybe he wants to take her to get a resurrection because he knows that she loves Shadow Moon and wants to be with him. I guess he wants to do that because maybe she'll be thankful for his generosity and thus give him the coin, like thankful that he gave her life again. So now that she can be with Shadow Moon, and then give him the coin. I guess he just can't wait anymore because his luck is so terrible. I think if he waits any longer, he might be dead. So he's just like, let me take you to Jesus, get you resurrected. You'll be happy. You'll give me the coin and I'll have my luck back. So maybe that's what's going on here. It has to be, because why would he offer to give her a resurrection and they clearly hate each other? Sweeney's like, I gotta get you to Kentucky because I'm guessing that's where Jesus is, and they're looking to find a car, and Laura's trying to get him to break into a specific car so they can drive down there, and because Laura's car was like impounded because they were just like, well, this was the car of the dead person, and she's like, well, I am the dead woman, it was my car. Anyway, her car was impounded, so they need to find a car to get down to Kentucky, and she's trying to get him to, I guess, break open a nicer looking car, but Sweeney's just like, these are the cars that I know how to hotwire, so this is what's happening. So he finds like this old beat up taxi, and while he's breaking into it, Salim points a gun at his head and he's like, get away from my car. Then all of a sudden it turns into like this mad Sweeney, Laura, and Salim like trip, because now Salim, I guess he's madly in love with the djinn and he's trying to find the djinn now. Then we head back to the scene with Shadow Moon and Mr. Wednesday, and Mr. Wednesday in this scene is doing everything but tell Shadow Moon that he's Odin, and I don't know why he won't tell him. I guess Shadow Moon has to figure it out on his own, but he's like explaining everything. Like you see the ravens again, then you see him talking about his 18 charms, and if you don't know, in Norse mythology, Odin has like 18 charms, and he was able to get these 18 charms through like going through like self-persecution and like harming himself in ways to like gain knowledge. Like he plucked out his eye for wisdom, he like hung himself from a tree to like gain knowledge in another area to gain another charm. So he's basically just going through the list of all the charms that he has because Mr. Wednesday is Odin. If you don't know by now, you gotta know after this scene. Mr. Wednesday is going through his charms. Shadow Moon is he's like in excruciating pain. He starts to talk to him about this wound that he got from the tree, and then all of a sudden, like, Mr. Wednesday looks at it and the wound starts moving, and Shadow Moon's just like, why is it moving? So Mr. Wednesday parks the car, he pulls Shadow Moon out, and he's talking to him. He's just like, you got to be really calm, and he like basically digs his hand into the wound, and he pulls out like this wood, like wormy, I guess, parasite or whatever it may be that was stuck into Shadow Moon's side that was given to him by Mr. Wood. And I don't know if that parasite was maybe like a God tracking device where media can't go or Mr. World can't go. Maybe Mr. Wood imparting that a piece of himself into Shadow Moon was maybe another way for them to track him. Anyway, while Mr. Wednesday is pulling out this like wood parasite, he's talking to Shadow Moon about Mr. Wood, and I'm just like, Shadow Moon, you don't get it by now? Like, he's talking to him, and he says his name. Mr. Wood was like an old god who he was the god of the forest and the trees. And I guess just like a Vulcan, you'll come to find out later, he saw the tide turning. And I guess with new believers and just the world updating themselves and gaining more knowledge in different areas, he saw the tide turning. So he decided to sacrifice the trees and the forest to join with the new gods to become something else. And it's not really clear what Mr. Wood has become, but we do know that he is an old god who now made sacrifices to join, who sacrificed, I guess, his godly essence, the forest and the trees, and I guess the forest and the trees were maybe his believers or those who believed in him. He sacrificed them to join in with the new gods. Now, in saying that, I was just like, for me, like when I heard Mr. Wednesday say that, I thought about rainforests and how there are a lot of protests going on all over the world, especially in South America, where people are trying to protect the rainforests because there are a lot of corporations, Mr. Wood, going into these rainforests and tearing down the trees and using the trees for like buildings or just like other things across the world, and maybe like selling the bark for really cheap and making a huge profit, selling the bark for really expensive and making a huge profit off of it. That's what I was thinking that Mr. Wood turned into, that maybe he turned into like one of these like wood corporations that are just going in and bulldozing rainforests and indigenous areas and taking the life out of that place and sacrificing the forest and the vegetation and the animals of that area to make room for condos or to sell this precious bark in different parts of the world. So that's what I was thinking that happened with Mr. Wood. If you know a different idea of what Mr. Wood turned into when he joined into the New Gods, please put it down in the comment section below. And also, does Mr. Wood stay in like tree formation throughout the book? Because I know that he was he's wood, so he can transform into anything that's wooden. So that's how he was able to see Shadow Moon and Mr. Wednesday in the police station, because he was able to transform into the form of that chair. Does he have human form, or is he just always going to be a tree? Let me know in the comment section below. With this whole Mr. Wood thing, I got like this revelation when I was watching the show. I thought about the Bible and the famous scripture, thorn in my side. And it's basically a scripture from 2 Corinthians 12:7. New Testament in the Bible, the Bible. It says, because of surpassing greatness of revelations, for this reason, to keep me from exalting myself, there was given me a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from exalting myself. Now, in this scripture, Apostle Paul is speaking about how he's getting like these godly revelations, like God is speaking to him. He's giving him visions and revelations. And he said that God gave him this thorn in his side to keep him humble to the point where he won't think that he's on like the godly level or that he's better than mortals or human beings. And so I don't know. I thought of that and I was just like, is this maybe? Because there are a lot of symbolisms in this show. And that's one thing that I like about this show. But I'm just like, if you don't know about the book, you don't realize that there is a lot of research that you have to do just to watch the show, because nothing in the show is just something, you know. A table is not just a table in this show. A chair is not just a chair in this show. Everything has symbolism and meaning. Like I would not have known that the piercings on Shadow Moon's side, I think in episode 1, was to emulate the piercings of Jesus Christ. Like I would have never known that if I didn't do research. So when I saw this wound and how it was on his side, and it was basically a splinter, a thorn in his side, I was just like, oh my goodness, is this from the Bible? Did Neil take from here and put that there? Because Shadow Moon is communing with a God and he's seeing godly visions, and maybe the new gods made Mr. Wood put this thorn in his side so that he doesn't get high and exalted and give Mr. Wednesday the faith and belief that he needs to get the power to be this God that he needs to be to win this war. I was just like, man, is that what's going on here? The thorn is put there to remind you of your humanity. And so maybe the thorn was put in Shadow Moon, or the splinter was put in Shadow Moon to not only track him, but to also remind him or just keep him focused on his flesh so that he cannot be focused on the things that's happening around him. Because even when all of these things were happening and Mr. Wednesday was sitting there and explaining to him and basically telling him that he is Odin, Shadow Moon couldn't hear because he was reeling in pain from this thorn in his side. I think I stumbled upon something, guys. That's why I take 2 days to do research. And I love the one-liners from Mad Sweeney. When he called Laura a leprechaun, I like choked on my apple juice. I was just like, this show has great writing. It's a really, really great show. I think I've said it every review, but it's a good show, guys. Good show. Sweeney, Salim, and Laura are all in Salim's taxi driving to Kentucky to, I guess, to meet Jesus, to resurrect Laura. And Salim, while they're driving there, Salim is discussing how, you know, basically him and Laura having like an intimate conversation. And I think Mad Sweeney was asleep, so I don't think that they would have had this conversation if he was up, because he's a jerk. And he makes them both feel very uncomfortable. Anyway, he's speaking to Laura, and he's basically just letting him know that he's in love with the djinn and that the djinn is his world, or my afterlife, or something like that. That's what he says. And then Mad Sweeney makes this comment, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. Oh, and this is what I thought initially was going to happen with the djinn and Salim. And maybe I could be wrong because I haven't read the book, but Mad Sweeney makes like this snide comment about them two having sex, and he chuckles. And the way he chuckled, or just like his reactions and just the way he said his words, made me feel like the jinn does this often. You know what I mean? Like the jinn sleeps with, you know, everybody that rubs him the right way. So I was just like, oh my goodness, I hope that Salim is not falling in love with the jinn and the jinn's feelings aren't reciprocated, because this is like what he does. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's just, you know, banging everything that wants a wish. I don't know. I felt like they had a really intimate scene and I felt like there was something more there, but Mad Sweeney's comment and just the way he was looking and speaking about the jinn, I was just like, does he do this often? Is this like his gimmick? Is this his thing? And I don't want my Salim's heart to be broken because he's so sweet, and his scene just made me so sad. All of his scenes make me so sad. And so I was really excited because I was happy that he was going to find the jinn because he was finding his true love. But then I'm just like, oh my goodness, will his feelings not be reciprocated because the jinn is a jerk? So wait, Laura has this whole scene where she talks about how she can't like stand her family, especially her mom. Then while Salim is driving to Kentucky, she sends him on a detour, and they actually detour to her family's home, and she walks, well, I think it's her family's home. I mean, I don't know why she would walk up to these random people, but she walks up to this home and she looks in and she sees these people who seem pretty miserable. And she has like a moment, and then she walks back to the car with Salim. She's just like, let's get on with it. And I'm like, I don't know. Laura is so, I thought I had her pegged. You know what I mean? I thought that she was somebody who was just extremely depressed, and her depression was coming out in an angry way. But I can't peg this character. I'm just like, is it depression? Is she soulless? Like, there is something going on with Laura, because I need an explanation on why she's so awful, and I don't know if we'll get it, because I don't know what people have done to her to make her so angry. But is it the religion that made her so just dense towards life? Sorry, my hair is huge and it keeps on getting caught. Is it religion? Did she grow up in a strict religious home? I don't know. I really don't know, but I cannot pin down why she's just a terrible person. We finally make it to Vulcan, Virginia. This is where Mr. Wednesday wanted to come because he wanted to meet Vulcan. And here we meet Vulcan, played by Corbin Benson, who's a fabulous actor. He did a really good job of playing him. Vulcan is a Roman god, basically the blacksmith god. Like, he's the god of power, but he's an old god, and I guess he updated with the new gods, and now he's the god of firepower. And firepower in America is guns and bullets. So he's in a town, like a red state, Nazi Germany. It looked like that, like outfits and everything. He's in this red state that screams racism, because if you look at how Shadowman was very uncomfortable being there, but Mr. Wednesday was chill, you know, I just felt like there was a lot going on, and this part of the show was really describing, you know, the stereotype of red states in America. Anyway, Vulcan has now updated, and because Americans love guns, he's doing very well. He's getting his sacrifices from people falling into the smelter, which is the heated up metal from the bullets. So every so often there's an accident at this bullet factory, Vulcan Bullet Factory, and people fall into this smelter, which is actually an ode to the volcanoes that people threw themselves in to sacrifice their lives to Vulcan. So that's like a sacrifice to him. And with every bullet and every gun that is shot and every bullet that is shot out, it's like a prayer to Vulcan, because his name is actually on the bullets. So that is how he updated. And and for me, it was a look into, or a comparison into, how the new gods were trying to negotiate with Mr. Wednesday. If you remember last review, I was just like, I don't know why they want to negotiate with him. But you guys explained to me that him negotiating with Mr. Wednesday and giving him what he thought he needed was still the new gods having power, because they were creating ways for him to be worshipped, and they were still able to be the architects of this old god and make it like a newer territory. So that's what they did with Vulcan. I guess they met up with Vulcan and they were just like, you know, old gods are dying out. This is what you should do. And even though Vulcan was like this huge god and god of firepower, god of swords and metal and all of those things, he he wasn't being worshipped, I guess, the way that he wanted to be. And I guess with a lot of these gods, if you're not worshipped, then you die out. So I guess he didn't want to die out. So the new gods were able to reinvent him. However, he's living the life, but he's living the life in Virginia. Like, he's not really reigning. And I think that's the issue. Mr. Wednesday wants to reign. And Vulcan is reigning in one little state, one little town, one little small Virginia town. It may look promising and it may look like this is awesome, but I guess if you're a god like Mr. Wednesday and you knew how you used to be worshipped, this isn't enough, but it was enough for Vulcan. Interesting fact about Vulcan, he's not in the book. He was actually a character that Neil Gaiman created for the series, because at first he was supposed to write, I think, the first episode, but something came up with scheduling, he couldn't do it. Anyway, this character he created because he was doing some travels throughout America, and he landed in this Alabama town, and he was saying that while he was traveling there, he saw a statue to Vulcan. It's like some statue in some Alabama town dedicated to Vulcan. And then he said also while he was there, he would hear stories about a factory that was now shut down, but when it was up and running, there were people, employees who were having casualties. They were dying on the job because the job was it was like beyond unsafe. And instead of fixing the issues, the factory just paid out the insurance to the families. You know what I mean? Like the settlements. They would settle with the family. So instead of spending $5 million to fix the issues in the factory, they would just pay the family $2 million, for the family member who was an employee who died. So that's where that whole employee falling into the smelter, being a sacrifice for Vulcan, and him being the god of firepower in this red state and this racist southern town. All of that is because Neil Gaiman had like this one little tour in a small little Alabama town. And if you're like me, you've also wondered why Vulcan had a limp, because I told you, this show doesn't explain anything. They just hope that you figure it all out and just watch the show and have a good time. But I could not watch this show and just not know what was going on. I think the research that I do after I watch the show and then I watch it again makes me like the show even more, so I don't mind it. But if you don't do any research, you really are missing so many layers of this show. Vulcan has a limp because Vulcan is the son of Zeus and goddess Hera. And I found several interpretations of why he has this limp. The two most prominent ones I found was that Hera, he was born with a deformity and Hera didn't like it, so she threw him in the ocean, and he was there in the ocean. He was, water nymphs found him and raised him in a cave and showed them their ways. And then another one, another interpretation said that Zeus actually threw him in the ocean, and that's where he got the deformity, because Vulcan got into a fight, interfered between a fight that was happening with Hera and Zeus. Like, he got into the middle of his parents having an argument, and Zeus was upset, so he threw him into the ocean, and that's where he got the deformity, the limp, from. So there's two different interpretations of that, but basically Vulcan has a limp because he has terrible parents. There's this drink called Soma that Mr. Wednesday was bringing to Vulcan, like he was giving him libations, and I guess he was using this to persuade him to not only join the old god war with him, but to also make him a sword for the war. So Mr. Wednesday is talking about this drink, but he's letting Shadow Moon know that he can't drink it. I'm just like, why can't Shadow Moon drink like liquor? But when I looked it up, Soma in Hindu mythology, I think it's Hindu mythology, it's basically like a drink of the gods. I think it's like faith or something like that. It's basically like this Coke 45 for gods. Basically, it's a liquor for gods that only gods can drink and humans can't consume it. So when I found that out, I was just like, okay, check. Shadow Moon isn't a god. I thought he was, but that thorn in his side from Mr. Wood, and then me thinking about 2 Corinthians 17, and then now this drink of the gods that only gods can drink, and Mr. Wood, they was really specific that Shadow Moon can't drink it. I'm just like, okay, so Shadow Moon isn't a god. Good, because I thought he was. I thought he was like the son of different gods or whatever. He's not. Still doesn't help, because I still have no idea who he is, and I hope we find out in the next 2 episodes. but I don't think we will. I also was always questioning Mad Sweeney's motives because he constantly belittles Laura in a way where he tries to let her know, or not tries to, he's very specific about letting her know that Shadow Moon doesn't want her, that she's undesirable. And he's also talking badly about Mr. Wednesday, but I feel like it's a ruse. I feel like he's still working for Mr. Wednesday because Mad Sweeney, working on Laura's mind and making her think that she is not wanted by Shadow Moon keeps them apart. And Mr. Wednesday does not want Laura and Shadow Moon to ever come together. So that's like driving a bigger wedge, and then him taking Laura out of the way from Shadow Moon. I don't know. I feel like Matt Sweeney is still working for Mr. Wednesday, although he's saying these negative things about him. I feel like he's still working for him because why is he so gung-ho on making Laura believe that Shadow Moon doesn't want her anymore? I'm telling you, there is a lynching and grandmother theme throughout this entire season because while Shadow Moon is at Vulcan's home, while he's there, he's looking out over to a tree. And while he's looking at this tree, the tree that looked like Mr. Wood, while he's looking at this tree, all of a sudden he imagines a noose. The lynchings of Black Americans in America, right? I've always thought that. But then when I looked up Odin's charms, I also found that he like lynched himself, like he hung himself to gain one of his charms. So I'm just like, is this lynching for Shadow Moon because he represents Black Americans and their suffering in America? Or is this an ode to Odin? I don't know, but it could be one or the other, or it could be both. But I do know that why I thought it was initially for Shadow Moon and for Black Americans is because Vulcan made this comment, do you like this tree? It's a hanging tree. He made it to Shadow Moon. He made this comment to Shadow Moon, who already felt uncomfortable by being in this, to be honest, clan state or clan town. So I don't know. I was just like, is that for him? Is that for Odin? Or is it both? You know what? My life would be so much easier if I just watched this show with the writers. If I could just sit in the writer's room before I watch the show, my Sunday nights would be a breeze. Vulcan agrees to make Mr. Wednesday a weapon for the war. And, you know, Mr. Wednesday is old school because Vulcan is just like, I'll make you a gun, I'll make you all this. And Mr. Wednesday is just like, nah, I want something old food. I want something old school. Don't make me anything manufactured. So they agree that Vulcan will make Mr. Wednesday a sword. And this sword that he makes, guys, phenomenal. My whole set is about to fall. The blade is sickening. It's, first of all, it's like the height of Mr. Wednesday. It's just wide and smooth. And you know what? It was kind of sad when you look at it in the character context because Vulcan really had a wonderful time creating this sword. Like, you could see that he was in his element. And it was sad because you saw an old god in his element, in his glory. And then you have to, you know, put it next to the fact that he sacrificed all of that because he felt like he was dying out. And he, you know, he updated himself. And I don't know, I guess the glory and the greatness is lost. And I think this is what Mr. Wednesday is trying to hold on to. Because seeing Vulcan make this sword, I was just like, oh man, he was in his glory. But then to see him in like this weird town being worshipped, it's just like, this is nothing compared to what you were back in the day. Which is, I guess, what Mr. Wednesday does not want. So after Vulcan shows Mr. Wednesday this blade, he then like reveals to him that he linked up with the new gods and that he's not going to join in with him with this old with the old god and new god war, and that the new gods are on their way. And then Mr. Wednesday takes the sword that Vulcan made him and cuts off his head and throws him into he falls into the smelter. And so at first I was just like, well, Vulcan's a god, he's going to come back. However, I don't think he will come back because Mr. Wednesday, who was a god, an old god, cut off Vulcan's head with a sword that Vulcan made. So I feel like once Vulcan is dead, he's dead after that. Like he wasn't murdered or slaughtered by anything that humans made. A god made this sword and the god cut his head off. So I don't know. I feel like Vulcan is gone, but a lot of people, especially on Reddit, were saying that Vulcan may come back. But I also don't think he's coming back because Mr. Wednesday like urinated on him, and he was, and first of all, Shadow Moon was so shocked. He was so shocked that Mr. Wednesday cut off Vulcan's head, and then he was even shocked by the fact that Mr. Wednesday like pissed on his body, and Shadow Moon was like, "What are you doing?" And Mr. Wednesday is like, "I'm cursing him." So maybe he's cursing Vulcan to stay in the smelter. I don't know, because then after that, you see these bullets being made with the body of Vulcan. Like in the smelter, whatever that, you know, that liquid metal where the bullets are made, he fell into that. And then we see the bullets being made from that. So I don't know. It looks highly unlikely for Vulcan to come back, but who knows? I didn't read the book. Then we end with Salim praying at sunrise and Mad Sweeney and Laura looking at him, overlooking him as he prays. Next week is going to be really, really good. I'm kind of upset because I thought that we were going to get Easter this episode. And I told you when I first started reviewing this, I was really excited about seeing Kristen Chenoweth work because I haven't seen her do a lot of stuff on TV lately. She's been doing like a lot of Broadway stuff because she's amazing. So I was really excited to see her in this show. And I thought I was going to see her this episode. But it seems like we're going to get Easter next episode. I don't know why. You know what I mean? I don't know like what would cause her to, you know, appear, but who knows? And I hope we see Bilquis again. I miss seeing that character. I mean, we have 2 more episodes. There's a lot of ground we have to cover. I don't know how they're going to do it, but all I know is that I will be there to review it. And if you like what you see here, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I will see you next week for the following episode of American Gods. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Oh, and also, guys, can I tell you, if I wasn't reviewing this show, I would have no idea what's going on. You guys give me so much information in the comment section. Sorry, my nose is still stopped up. In the comments section. And I totally appreciate it because it really helps me figure out what I'm watching, because without the research that I've done, and especially without the information that you guys give me in the comments section, I wouldn't know what I was watching. I probably still enjoy the show, but because you guys help me and give me so much information, I'm like enamored with the show because I know what's going on, and I always get excited about what I'm about to, what's coming up next week, because you guys are just so great. You give so much information, and I look forward to doing these reviews and dialoguing with you. So thanks for stopping by. See you next week. Bye, guys.